What is a person willing to do to protect his honor and dignity? I think about a lot of things. I just wanted to teach a lesson to two crooks who have been leading me by the nose for a long time. So I wanted to do everything beautifully. But I did not expect that the situation would turn against me and I could face imprisonment.
I'm so furious with her that I feel like I could harm her. I growled angrily, taking another sip of my beer. Hey, Johnny, don't talk like that, Billy cautioned, which was somewhat ironic considering Billy had a more fiery temper than me. Back in high school, he was always getting into fights. The smallest things could trigger him. But she's being unfaithful to me, I complained. As far as I can tell, she's been having an affair with her doctor friend for a couple of months now. How could she do that to me? Billy ordered us another round, and once it arrived at our table, he urged me to share the details of what happened. I wasn't eager to delve into it, but strangely, it felt relieving to talk about the situation, almost like discussing a past surgery, I suppose. So, I began from the start. I always believed Doris and I had a solid marriage. Sure, we had occasional disagreements. What couple doesn't? But we always reconciled and moved on, and that's what truly matters. Financially, we had a comfortable life together. I dropped out of college during my sophomore year. Academia wasn't my thing. However, I didn't really need a degree because I possessed natural salesmanship skills. I landed a job at one of the two largest auto dealerships in town, and soon enough, I was earning a good income. Doris and I got engaged during her junior year, and we tied the knot when she was a senior. The ironic twist is that Doris ended up pursuing a career in sales as well. Upon completing her education, she joined one of the major pharmaceutical companies, essentially marketing prescription drugs to physicians. Between the two of us, we weren't wealthy, but we were managing fine. While we hadn't started a family yet, I assumed it was in our future. What initially captivated me about Doris was her physique. When we first met, she was slender and fit, and even after 6 years of marriage, she maintained that look. Part of it was probably good genetics, but she also became a dedicated fitness enthusiast, hitting the gym 3, 4, or even 5 days a week. The positive side was that her body remained toned and attractive, not in an overly muscular bodybuilder way that makes me uneasy, but more like the Jillian Michaels you often see on TV. I really appreciated that. However, the downside was that all the exercising seemed to take a toll on her energy. Recently, whenever I wanted to enjoy her appealing physique in bed, all she wanted to do was sleep. As I had just discovered, there was another reason she wasn't interested in intimate moments with me, and that reason was Morris Fisher, one of the doctors she regularly interacted with. I accidentally discovered the affair between my wife and the respectable Dr. Fisher. Despite being the intelligent one in our family, Doris has a tendency to forget things. It's not uncommon for us to search for her misplaced cell phone or return to retrieve a forgotten purse. So, finding out she had left her laptop at home when heading to work this morning didn't raise any suspicions. However, what did catch my attention was an email in her inbox titled, "Yesterday was so hot." Naturally, I opened it promptly. In short, it became evident that she and Dr. Fisher had been coordinating meetings at a motel through email for several months. The contents of the other emails strongly suggested that their rendezvous had nothing to do with discussing medications. Delving into her sent mail, the things she expressed to him made it clear that this was more than just a casual affair. They were immersed in a full-fledged romance. "I never saw it coming," I lamented to Billy. "What am I going to do, man?" "If it were my wife, I'd serve her a fist sandwich before kicking her to the curb," Billy declared self-righteously. "Nah, I could never resort to violence with Doris," I replied. "I'll just have to divorce her and move on with my life, but I'd love to find a way to get back at Dr. Morris Fisher for ruining my marriage." As I sat there sipping my drink, an idea struck me. Leaning across the table, I spoke to Billy in a hushed tone. "Hey, buddy, would you be willing to help me seek some revving? I think I have a plan that won't have any consequences for us." Billy's eyes gleamed. "Tell me what you've got," he said eagerly. My concept was straightforward. We'd use Doris's email to entice the reputable doctor back to the motel, but this time, it would be us lying in wait, not her. Our plan involved restraining him, confiscating his clothes, and leaving him stranded in his underwear. Subsequently, we intended to tip off the TV news so they could capture the moment when the police rescued him. If that didn't expose his true nature to the world, nothing else would. Billy raised a concern, but he'll know it was use. "I've thought of that," I assured him. "We'll wear ski masks and use surgical gloves to avoid leaving any fingerprints. It'll be foolproof." "But what if he figures out you sent the email from Doris's account?" Billy questioned. "Perhaps," I admitted. "But even if he does, I doubt he'll confess. Revealing the affair would likely not sit well with his wife." Billy gave me a discerning look. "You might be onto something. Plus, he could suspect you, but proving it would be challenging. Especially if I delete the email from Doris's computer after sending it," I added triumphantly. "Let's go for it," Billy declared. "I can't stand cheaters. That doctor owes you for messing with your wife." "All right, here's the plan," I informed him. "Tonight, I'll send him an email using Doris's computer, arranging a meeting at their usual motel just after lunch. Tomorrow morning, you go ahead and reserve a room. When he arrives, instead of finding Doris, we'll apprehend him. And then we mutilate him, right?" Billy eagerly inquired. No, I quickly responded. "Let's take the high road on this. We'll restrain him, undress him, tie him to a chair, and leave him there. I'll anonymously tip off the police about a disturbance in room 101. After that, you call your friend at the TV station and mention that you heard rumors of a significant police investigation at the motel. It'll make headlines, and he'll become the town's joke. Even if he keeps quiet, it'll still be embarrassing since everyone will know he wasn't on a legitimate visit. And if he spills the beans about why he went to the motel in the first place, the whole town will find out about his affair with Doris, and then I'll kick her to the curb." "Sounds perfect," Billy eagerly agreed. "I can't wait." "Just one thing to remember, Billy," I cautioned. "When you book that room, don't use your credit card." "Why not?" Billy questioned. I tried not to show my exasperation. "Because you don't want the police tracing the room rental back to you when they investigate the doc's disappearance," I explained impatiently. "Oh, got it," Billy replied. Internally, I sighed. Billy was a good guy, but he wouldn't be winning any Nobel Prizes anytime soon. That night, upon returning home, I maintained a facade of normalcy, pretending as if nothing were amiss. I subtly hinted to Doris about my interest in some intimate moments after dinner, but as expected, she promptly dismissed the idea. I was unsure whether Fisher was exhausting her or if her infatuation with him made her resistant to my advances. Nevertheless, my plan was clear. I would soon end things with the unfaithful woman after exacting my revenge on her lover. Once Doris had retired for the night, I located her rolling suitcase, the one she used to transport her medical samples and other items for doctors. True to form, her laptop was nestled inside. Although her email was protected by a password, I had anticipated this obstacle. Doris, being forgetful, had her passwords documented on a sheet of paper tucked into her wallet. Retrieving it, I entered the password, and voila, I gained access. As I began composing my invitation to Dr. Love, confident that I could phrase it in a way that would be irresistible, I hit a sudden obstacle. A crucial issue emerged. Billy was planning to book a motel room tomorrow, and I needed to ascertain the room number immediately to inform the good doctor. "Well done, fool," I berated myself. "No Nobel Prize for you this year either." Swiftly, I dialed Billy's number. When he answered, I inquired, "Can we talk?" "Of course," he responded. "Can you hear me?" No, I nearly shouted. "I mean, can you talk without Phyllis overhearing?" "Oh," he realized. "She's not here. Feel free to proceed." When I explained my predicament, Billy reassured me, saying, "No worries, just make an anonymous call to the doc tomorrow and let him know the room." "Yeah, that'll be smooth," I replied sarcastically. "Do you really think he won't find it suspicious if some guy informs him about where to rendezvous with my wife for a discreet meeting?" "Oh, right," Billy acknowledged, and I suppressed a groan. Then a solution struck me. "I've got it," I exclaimed. "When you go to the motel tomorrow, book a room for 2 days. I'll email the doc tomorrow night, confirming the meeting for the next day and providing the room number." "Okay," Billy agreed. "But what should we do with the room tomorrow?" "We're not using it for anything," I said, attempting to curb my impatience. "Well, that seems like a waste to me," Billy remarked, "and I'm not sure my credit card can handle 2 days." "No credit cards, Billy," I exclaimed, quickly covering my mouth to avoid waking Doris. In a hushed tone, I added, "I'll cover you if you're short on cash, Billy, but make sure to use cash, not your credit card. Remember, pay in cash." He agreed, and we ended the call, but a sense of unease began to creep over me. Regardless, Billy followed my instructions, calling back the next day with the room number. It was a breeze, Johnny. The desk clerk barely paid me any attention, and I paid in cash like we planned. Plus, we got room 101. It's on the end, so it should be extra quiet. "Perfect, buddy," I assured him. "You did well. I'll send out that email tonight and make sure to handle the other details we discussed." "What other details, Johnny?" I let out a deep sigh, but managed to control my frustration. "Don't forget the duct tape and your camera," I reminded him. "I'll bring the surgical gloves and ski masks for us to wear." "Ah, right," he acknowledged. As I hung up, I muttered to myself, "If he utters 'ah, right' one more time, I swear I'll scream." Doris went to bed early again, allowing me to send my message to Dr. Fisher without any issues. In the email, I tantalizingly promised the man an unforgettable experience if he showed up at room 101 in the motel tomorrow at 1 p.m. "I'm going to blow your mind," I wrote, and that line kept me amused all night. However, when the anticipated day arrived, the situation didn't seem as amusing. Doubts crept in, and I questioned whether I was on the verge of doing something incredibly foolish. Yet, the memory of the affectionate emails exchanged between the two cheaters reignited my anger. Dr. Fisher deserved the humiliation awaiting him, and so did Doris. I, the faithful husband, wronged by their actions, believed they deserved what was coming. Around mid-morning, I called Billy on his cell phone to confirm everything. He was supposed to come to the dealership at 12:30, posing as a customer for a test drive. This was our cover story, and I needed reassurance that everything was still on track. "Where are you, Billy? Are you at home?" I inquired. "Nah, I spent the night in the motel room," he casually mentioned. "What?" I exclaimed. "Why on earth did you do that?" "Well, it seemed like a waste to leave it empty. Besides, Phyllis and I had a disagreement, and I needed to get out of the house." Once again, I found myself expressing disbelief through a headshake. Billy's wife, an attractive nurse employed at the hospital, was acquainted with Doris, as they both frequented the same gym. Despite Phyllis appearing to be a decent woman, it was evident that she and Billy were constantly embroiled in arguments. Although I couldn't endorse the idea of leaving incriminating evidence scattered around the motel room, especially considering my knowledge of forensic investigations from watching CSI. "Billy," I admonished sternly, "we agreed on avoiding any traces in the room." "Oh, right," Billy responded, and I clenched my teeth to stifle a scream. "Listen, Billy, clean up your mess in there. Sanitize every surface you touched, and then make your way to the dealership. Remember, you must arrive here at 12:30 sharp." Despite my reservations, Billy arrived punctually at the showroom at precisely 12:30. I signed out for a demonstration vehicle and we hurried to the motel. Equipping Billy and myself with surgical gloves, we entered the room, finding the expected disarray. Initially concerned about the possibility of Dr. Fisher arriving early, I reminded myself that doctors seldom kept appointments on time. Collaborating efficiently, Billy and I managed to tidy up the room as best as possible before the doctor's anticipated arrival. Closing all blinds and curtains, extinguishing every light, and securing the door with a flip security latch, we donned ski masks and retreated to the shadows. The room plunged into darkness, save for the light seeping beneath the door. As we stood in silence, Billy startled me by whispering, "It sure is spooky in here." Exercising all my restraint, I refrained from strangling him. "Quiet, Billy," I hissed. "He could be outside right now." "Oh, right." Before I could reply, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. I gestured for Billy to be silent and discreetly pointed at the camera he held. He nodded, and I hoped it signaled his recollection of the plan. Peeking around the corner cautiously, we awaited the unfolding events. Just then, the door swung open, and a man strolled into the room, playfully calling out, "Hey Doris, where are you, sexy lady?" I nudged Billy to prepare for action. "Here I am," I whispered, and as he turned our way, Billy unleashed his camera, its flash blinding the man. He yelped, momentarily incapacitated by the intense light. Waiting for him to recover, I took advantage of the opportunity and swiftly incapacitated him. Being a fairly sizable guy with some fight experience, I may have put a little extra force into that punch, as the man dropped to the carpet like a stone. I circled around, nursing my aching fist. "Damn, that hurt," I groaned. Thankfully, Billy remained focused on the task at hand. After securing the motel room door, he returned to assess the situation with the unconscious man. Whistling, he remarked, "You really got him, Johnny. He's out cold." "Keep it down," I hissed, "and don't use my name." "Sorry, Johnny," Billy apologized. "Come on," I directed. "Help me strip him of his clothes." We removed our ski masks and proceeded to attempt disrobing the doctor. Undressing a limp body proved surprisingly challenging, but after considerable effort, we managed to reduce the doc to his blue-striped boxers. Neither of us wanted to handle his private parts, so we stopped at that point. We then maneuvered him into a desk chair and secured him with duct tape. Despite appearing unconscious, I didn't want to risk him waking up and making noise, so I taped his mouth shut as well. "All right," I declared. "We're finished here. Let's toss his clothes in the dumpster in the parking lot and return to the dealership." "Are you sure you don't want to cut off the bastard's pecker?" Billy inquired, producing a menacing folding knife from his pocket. "Put that away, Billy," I hurriedly replied. "We discussed this. Our goal is to humiliate him, not harm him." "Got it," Billy acknowledged, stowing his knife away to my relief. We gathered the doctor's remaining clothes and headed towards the exit. As we left, I used the metal safety latch to prevent the door from closing. "Why'd you do that?" Billy questioned. "So the police and the news crew can easily access the room," I explained to him. "Oh, right," Billy responded. I let out a sigh as we exited the back door of the motel. On our way back to the dealership, I disposed of the doctor's clothes, gloves, and ski masks in a dumpster. When we returned, Billy hopped into his pickup truck to leave. Leaning into his window, I reiterated the plan. "I'll make an anonymous call to 911 and report a disturbance at the motel. Once you're home, call your friend at the station. Tell him you witnessed the police arriving at the motel and it seemed like something significant was happening." He nodded, and I could only hope he'd execute it correctly. The test drive with Billy lasted only slightly longer than usual, and no one seemed to question it. I breathed a sigh of relief mentally. It seemed like we had pulled it off. The remainder of the afternoon dragged on endlessly, but finally the day concluded. I hopped into my car, heading to the bar to meet up with Billy. I was so on edge that I felt almost euphoric. The anticipation of witnessing the respectable doctor being escorted out of a seedy motel in his underwear on the 10 o'clock news had me nearly salivating. The only thing better would be watching Doris's reaction beside me. Billy was already seated at a table with a beer waiting for me. "Well," I asked eagerly, "did you follow through with calling your friend at the station as we discussed?" "Yup," he replied, taking a long swig from his bottle. "Did the news crew capture the doc on tape leaving the motel?" "Sure did." "Well, what did your friend say? How did Fisher appear?" Billy shook his head. "You couldn't really tell because of the body bag." "Body bag? What body bag?" "The one the doc was in," he said. I stared at him in dismay. "He was dead, Johnny," Billy explained. "They had to carry him out in a bag." "How is that possible, Billy?" "He was fine when we left him, except maybe for that lump on his jaw. Someone must have entered the room after we left and got him, Johnny. When my buddy called me back to thank me for the tip, he said a maid found the doc with his throat cut, clean as a whistle. There was blood everywhere. It'll be the lead story on the news tonight." Until now, the only instance in my life when I felt lightheaded was during a particularly brutal hit while playing football back in high school. However, at this moment, I sensed a similar sensation, and it seemed like I might even pass out. This had to be the worst possible scenario. Attempting to compose myself, I took a substantial gulp of my beer and fixed my gaze on Billy. "Do the police have any leads on who did it?" I inquired. "Nah," Billy replied calmly. "My buddy said no one saw or heard anything." "Listen, Billy, this is a serious situation. If this comes back to us, we're in deep trouble." "Why?" he asked. "We didn't kill him." "We know that, but the police don't," I said frustratedly. "If they discover we were the ones who tied him up, they'll definitely try to pin the murder on us." "Oh, I see." I had an urge to reach across the table and shake some sense into him, but I understood that losing control was not an option at this moment. "Billy, we have to keep this absolutely quiet. You can't talk to anyone. Not Phyllis, not your buddy at the TV news, not anyone. If you do, we might end up in prison. Understand?" "Sure, Johnny, sure." "Our best chance is that the police quickly apprehend the actual culprit. Once they make an arrest, the focus will shift away from us." "Don't worry, Johnny. I'll keep my mouth shut," he assured, accompanied by that foolish hand and mouth gesture we picked up in 5th grade. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. As I left, heading home, I could only hope that Billy would stay silent. However, I doubted he could keep it up for long. If the cops ever brought him in for questioning, we were in trouble. Why did I have to seek revenge on that despicable doctor? Why hadn't I just filed for divorce from Doris and let it be? Doris! Oh my goodness. I had planned to confront her about her infidelity tonight. Well, that plan was thrown out the window. I would have to go home and put on a facade of being content around her. What a hassle that was going to be. I hoped I could pretend well enough to deceive her. Upon arriving home, it was worse than expected. No sooner had I walked in the door than Doris rushed up to me, bursting into tears. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked. "What's happened?" "Oh, Johnny," she sobbed. "It's so terrible. That kind Dr. Fisher, the one I often call on, he's been murdered. It's all over the news." "I can't believe it," I said, attempting to sound shocked and sympathetic. "What happened?" "They found his body in a motel room," she wailed. "His throat had been cut." I knew I shouldn't have, but I couldn't resist saying, "They found him in a motel room? Sounds like he must have been meeting someone for a little afternoon delight." "You don't know that," she snapped at me. "Anyway, you need to get your mind out of the gutter at a time like this." "I'm sorry, honey. I didn't mean to make light of such a terrible tragedy," I said apologetically. It irritated me to speak kindly about the jerk. I didn't wish for him to be murdered, but I wasn't exactly torn up about it, and it added insult to injury to know the true reason Doris was so upset. The entire evening unfolded in a similar fashion. Each time Doris entered the room, her eyes were filled with tears. During the news broadcast, she concealed her face with her handkerchief. It disgusted me, especially when the TV reporter began praising the deceased and lamenting the tremendous loss to the community. This wasn't how it was supposed to be, I thought. They should be exposing him as the deceitful scoundrel he was, not glorifying him. It's just not right. Doris went to bed without having dinner, so I had to make a sandwich to stave off hunger. However, I wasn't particularly hungry myself. Apart from the challenge of feigning concern for Doris, I was anxiously fretting about potential repercussions. Billy and I had been cautious, but what if we left behind some incriminating evidence? What would I tell the police if they came knocking? Who would believe that we only tied up Fisher without causing harm, except for that minor tap on the jaw? After a sleepless night, I headed to work the next day, but there was no respite. Dr. Fisher had been a customer, and his murder dominated conversations. Everyone had a theory about the perpetrator and the motive. I considered proposing an alternative theory to divert attention, but I couldn't think of anything plausible. Eventually, I opted to stay silent, hoping the situation would blow over swiftly. When I met Billy at the bar that evening, it was evident he was eager to share something. "You won't believe what I found out about the doc's murder," he exclaimed loudly as I approached his table. "Quiet down, Billy," I whispered, casting a stern glance in his direction. "We agreed not to discuss that with anyone." "Sure," he replied, "but you won't believe what my friend at the station just found out. The police haven't released this info yet." Despite my unease, curiosity got the better of me. "All right, spill it. What did he learn?" Leaning in closer, Billy shared, when they discovered the body, the killer had carved the word slut into his chest. It seems like a revenge killing. The revelation left me stunned. I leaned back, contemplating the implications. "But wait, there's more," Billy continued. "The cops are pretty certain it was a guy. They don't think a woman could have subdued him, stripped him, and forced him into a chair. It had to be someone strong." My head swirled at this latest information. "Oh, Billy, this is bad. If they link us to this, I could end up in serious trouble." "But you're innocent," Billy insisted. "Yeah, but how do I prove that? I had the motive, I fit the description, and I definitely had the opportunity. All that's missing is the murder weapon." Billy attempted reassurance. "I've seen those true crime shows on TV. Maybe you got rid of the weapon." "Billy, you're not making me feel any better. I didn't do it, remember?" "Right. If I was uneasy the night before, tonight was even worse. Honestly, looking at all the evidence, even I started questioning my innocence. The only relief was that tomorrow was my day off, sparing me from enduring endless speculation about the murder at the showroom. However, that did little to ease my troubled sleep. The following day, Doris left the house to head to the gym, presumably attempting to alleviate her sorrows through exercise. In an effort to temporarily escape my own concerns, I opted to engage in some yard work. It was a beautiful day, and the lawn desperately needed mowing. Stripping down to an old pair of shorts, I began tending to the front yard. As I meticulously mowed the grass into smaller sections, a car pulled up in front of our house, and an attractive young woman stepped out. Observing her approaching, I promptly turned off the mower. She appeared to scrutinize me as she walked towards me. "Is your wife at home?" she inquired. "Darn, must be the Avon lady," I thought. "No, sorry," I responded with a smile. "You just missed her. I'm her husband, Johnny. I'm the only one here." She reached into her bag and produced a card. "I'm Detective Monica Ferguson. Could you have her give me a call when she returns? I'd like to ask her some questions about Dr. Morris Fisher." A jolt of fear ran through me. "Why do you want to talk to her about him?" I asked, a bit too hastily. The detective smiled, patting my hand as she spoke. "Don't be alarmed," she reassured. "We're just trying to interview everyone who had contact with Dr. Fisher. His office staff informed us that your wife is one of the drug company representatives who regularly visited him." "Right," I replied. Internally, I lamented, "Shit, that sounds just as foolish as when Billy says it." While chastising myself mentally, she continued to appraise me, and I pondered whether she was flirting or assessing my potential involvement in a crime. Eventually, she inquired, "What about you? Did you know Dr. Fisher?" "Sure, I knew him," I admitted, then realizing the implications of my words. "I mean, I knew of him through Doris, but I've never, actually been introduced to him." She studied me for a moment longer before saying, "Okay, thanks for your cooperation. Don't forget to ask your wife to call me." As she started to leave, she paused and added, "See you around." I gazed at her disappearing figure and questioned myself. Why on earth did I claim to know Fisher? I pondered if my response sounded suspicious and tried to decipher the meaning behind her parting words. "See you around." Needless to say, any peace and tranquility I had attained while working in the yard had now evaporated. Later that night, the local news featured an interview with the police chief regarding the Fisher murder. He pompously declared, "We've uncovered crucial new evidence in the case and hope to make an arrest soon." My blood pressure surged, attempting to scale Mount Everest. Eager to learn more, I anticipated meeting with Billy and discovering if his contact had any insights into this recent development. Before we even settled at the bar table, I bombarded my friend with questions. "Billy," I said urgently, "the chief is bluffing." Billy responded bluntly, "My buddy says they've got nothing new. They're just hoping to flush someone out of cover." "But what about the CSI investigation? They must have found something in that motel room," I insisted. My friend mentioned that so many guests stayed in that room, and it's been cleaned numerous times. "There was nothing they could use," Billy explained. Then concern crept onto his face. "You don't look well, Johnny. You've got to ease up a bit. Don't let this thing get to you." "That's easy for you to say," I snapped. "You didn't have a police detective show up at your house yesterday." "Was it a woman named Monica?" he asked. When I nodded in surprise, he continued, "Yeah, the same one who was at the hospital asking around. They've got nothing. They're just grasping at straws." As I left the bar, I couldn't shake off Billy's calm demeanor. How could he remain so composed while I was consumed with worry? How could he be so certain that his buddy at the TV station truly knew the entire story? Eventually, I concluded that Billy's optimism was inversely proportional to his IQ. Given that I had glimpsed Billy's IQ score in his file before he dropped out of high school, that realization terrified me. After enduring another night without sleep and downing multiple antacids, I realized I had to take action. Waiting for the police to catch the killer wasn't an option, especially when I seemed like the most likely suspect. My only chance to clear my name was to embark on my own quest to uncover the real murderer. The major hurdle in this plan was my lack of knowledge on how to conduct a murder investigation. While it seemed straightforward on TV, the practicality of it in real life left me clueless. Think, I urged myself. I decided to start by assuming that the person who killed the doctor must have known him. It seemed improbable that a complete stranger would casually enter a motel room and murder whoever happened to be taped to a chair. And what about the SLT carved into Fisher's chest? If that wasn't a targeted act, I would be surprised. So, the crucial question was, who, besides me, would want to harm Dr. Fisher? Wait, no, I didn't want to kill the doctor. I just wanted to embarrass him. Someone else had a more sinister agenda. But who? Since I had no acquaintance with Fisher, I needed to speak to someone who did to find the answer. The logical choice was his wife, who might have insights into who harbored ill will towards her late husband. Now, the challenge was to find a way to get her, a complete stranger, to open up to me. I'll admit it. What I did next was quite foolish. Desperation was mounting, and I couldn't think of any other alternatives. On my next day off, I went to a store and purchased a toy detective's badge, painted gold. It wouldn't withstand close scrutiny. My only hope was to bluff my way through. After all, I had seen a similar tactic in a movie based on actual events, so maybe it could work for me too. With determination, I dressed in a suit and tie and drove to the late Dr. Fisher's impressive house, fitting for a successful doctor. I lingered in the circular driveway for a moment, mustering the courage to approach the doctor's wife. I was aware that the likelihood of her engaging in conversation with me was slim, and the chances of obtaining any valuable information were even slimmer. Nevertheless, the thought of avoiding prison and the undesirable company of someone named Bubba compelled me to ring her doorbell. The woman who answered the door reminded me of wilting flowers in a vase, retaining some beauty but showing signs of fading. A highball glass in her hand didn't enhance her appearance either. I presented the badge tucked inside my wallet and greeted her. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Fisher. I'm Detective—" "Another one?" she interrupted. "Well, I hope you're the good cop." What?" I inquired. "Isn't that how you people operate? The woman I spoke to the other day was definitely the bad cop, so I hope you're the good cop." Well, I hesitated. "Never mind," she said. "Come on in," motioning with her drink for me to enter. "Care for some scotch and soda?" she offered as she led me into her den. "No thanks," I declined. "I'm on duty." "Well, there's no sense in it going to waste," she replied, mixing herself another drink. Judging by her unsteady walk, it wasn't her first refill of the day. Upon her return, she sat down and I opened the official looking pad I had, despite its unfortunate Hello Kitty cover. "First, Mrs. Fisher, let me extend my sympathies on the tragic loss of your husband." Yeah, he's dead. Let's get on with it," she impatiently interjected. I was taken aback by her demeanor, prompting me to express my observation. "If you don't mind me saying so, Mrs. Fisher, it seems like you're not deeply mourning his passing," I ventured. Her response caught me off guard as she slurred, taking another sip of her scotch. "Mourning? Hell, I'm celebrating," she declared. "My late husband was cheating on me, Detective. As far as I'm concerned, he got what he deserved." Despite my curiosity about her attitude, I hesitated to inquire about her knowledge of Doris. "Well, if he cheated on you, why not just get a divorce?" I asked. "Couldn't afford to," she replied casually. "I signed a prenuptial agreement when we got married. If I divorced him, I'd walk away with nothing more than what I brought into the marriage. No, the truth is, someone doing away with the bastard was the best thing that could have happened to me." Her revelation surprised me. It seemed like she was inadvertently confessing to murder. However, I wondered why she would disclose such information, especially to a detective. Perhaps she had consumed more alcohol than I realized, or maybe she was genuinely innocent but naive. Choosing not to jump to conclusions, I decided to explore other potential suspects. "Mrs. Fisher, do you know of anyone who might have had a motive for killing your husband?" I asked. "Oh, sure," she replied nonchalantly. "Several of them." "Really?" I inquired, surprised. "Sure. It could have been any one of the husbands of the wives he cheated on," she said casually. "My late husband just couldn't keep his pants zipped. Over the years, he cheated on me numerous times. It wouldn't surprise me if a jealous husband decided to get revenge." She shook her head bitterly. "My Morris was a real SLT," she added. I almost let out a gasp when she uttered those words. Her use of the term SLI didn't strike me as a mere coincidence. Despite the undeniable suspicion, it wasn't a confession. Moreover, she had just given me a list of other potential suspects to investigate. The detective work was becoming increasingly complex. "Any idea who his lovers were?" I asked with a hint of nervousness, wondering if she would mention Doris. "I have no clue," she replied. "After catching him cheating the first time, I stopped caring." There went that lead. "But weren't you afraid he might develop feelings for one of them and leave you?" I inquired. As I mentioned, Morris couldn't stay faithful to me or anyone else. However, I always knew he'd stick with me because he enjoyed the image of being a happily married man in the community. I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for her. What a miserable marriage. What about the risk of diseases? Weren't you concerned about him infecting you? I asked. She smirked. He was a doctor. Even if he did contract something, he knew how to treat it. Besides, once I figured out what was happening, I stopped sleeping with him. It's been a long time since I've been with a man. Putting down her drink, she gave me a calculating look. You know, you're quite a good-looking guy. How about helping a girl end her dry spell? With that, she swiftly moved off the couch onto her knees, positioned herself in front of me and, to my surprise, started fumbling with my zipper. No, wait, Mrs. Fisher. I'd really like to, but I'm happily married. I hesitated, but then it hit me. I wasn't happily married anymore. In fact, I planned to end the marriage soon. The prospect of getting back at my wife and settling the score with her husband suddenly seemed quite appealing. Since it had been a while since I had been intimate, I stopped resisting. As soon as she unzipped me, she swiftly reached into my pants and pulled out my arousal. With the speed of a robin grabbing a worm, she descended and took me into her mouth. Impressive. She definitely knew how to perform oral sex. In no time, she had me fully aroused, and without hesitation, she deep-throated me. The combination of her tongue and the pressure from her throat made me moan, and I started thrusting my hips, approaching a powerful climax. However, she pulled me out of her mouth and playfully wagged her finger at me. No, 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 she said with a mischievous smile. I want to enjoy myself too. She pulled on my belt buckle, and when it gave way, she pulled my pants down my thighs. Then she stood up and lifted her skirt around her waist. Surprisingly, the cheeky person wasn't wearing any underwear. As I gazed at her legs and hips, I recognized that while her youthful charm might have slightly diminished, those long legs were still in excellent condition. The enticing aroma emanating from her captivated me, and I was more than eager to engage with her. Come on, darling, she whispered to me. I crave the intensity of that moment right now. Saying this, she climbed onto my lap and positioned herself astride me. It had been an extended period for me, far too lengthy, I realized. This woman was well versed in her actions. She swayed her hips, moved them in various directions, and then resumed her rhythmic motion, remarkably energetic for someone more mature. I was in ecstasy, fully aware that I wouldn't be able to resist for much longer. Normally, I take pride in my endurance, making sure my partner reaches climax before I do. However, it had been so long that I doubted my ability to hold back. As a result, I slid my hand under her, teasing her other opening with my forefinger. She responded positively, squirming and moaning. Thinking she enjoyed it, I decided to explore further. Continuing my movements, a delightful sensation surged through me as I felt her tighten around me. Now, we both were howling, reaching a climax that must have resonated through the surroundings. As I slouched against the couch, I couldn't help but worry about potential eavesdroppers among her neighbors, fearing they might mistake our passionate encounter for a crime. After a brief pause, Mrs. Fisher leaned back, expressing gratitude with her eyes. Oh, baby, that was amazing. I didn't realize how much I'd missed it. I gazed at her, a blend of curiosity and admiration in my eyes. How did you learn to do that incredible move inside, with your pussy? This content may violate our usage policies. Did we get it wrong? Please tell us by giving this response a thumbs down. She flashed a grin and gave me a playful wink. I might be a bit older than you, sweetheart, but I haven't forgotten all the tricks I've picked up over the years. Reaching over, she grabbed a couple of cocktail napkins and handed them to me to tidy myself up. After doing the same for herself, she stood up and fixed another drink. Care for one now? She inquired. No, I replied. I need to get back to the station. She cast a lazy glance at me as I pulled up my pants and zipped myself. That was quite enjoyable, she remarked. We should do that again. Hey, what did you say your name was? I started feeling uneasy. I didn't say, I replied, heading for the door. Oh, she said nonchalantly. Well, anyway, give me a call. With that, I slipped out the door and hurried to my car. As I drove away, I felt content with the unexpected encounter, but my mood darkened as I pondered everything she had shared before our intimate moment. If Dr. Fisher was truly a cheater, he could have been targeted by a jealous husband other than myself. Exploring this avenue seemed promising, considering there might be multiple individuals with motives. However, the challenge lay in investigating when I had no knowledge of the other lovers Dr. Fisher might have had. The more potential suspects, the harder it would be to narrow down the list. Then my thoughts turned to Mrs. Fisher. Despite her prowess as a passionate lover, I couldn't help but wonder if she might also be a ruthless killer. If she had seen the email inviting her husband to the motel, she could have waited until Billy and I departed, then entered and sought revenge. Executing it that way would have framed us while she inherited her husband's assets. I had to admit, it would have been a clever move if she was indeed the killer. However, if she had indeed murdered her husband, why would she confess her motive to a detective? It appeared to be a rather foolish move. But what if she's more cunning than she appears? What if she intentionally disclosed details about the prenup to mislead me? Could she be more than just a grieving widow, possibly manipulating me to divert my attention? The more I pondered the situation, the more my head throbbed. Fortunately, it was time to rendezvous with Billy. I needed someone to share my thoughts with. Over a cold drink, I briefed Billy on what I had gleaned from Mrs. Fisher. The issue, I confided in him, is that I now have more potential suspects than I can handle. How am I going to pinpoint the real murderer? Well, Billy suggested, if you did know who it was, I bet you could make a fortune. I stared at him in bewilderment. What are you saying, Billy? It's simple, he explained. I bet the actual killer would be willing to pay you a hefty sum to prevent you from reporting to the police. That's blackmail, Billy. We already have enough complications without adding a blackmail charge. Oh, right. Instead of growing frustrated with Billy, I began contemplating his idea. Hold on a minute, I said. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. Huh? I remember seeing it on a TV show once. All we need to do is spread the word that we're aware of the culprit and want money to keep quiet. Then, when someone shows up to negotiate, we've found the real killer. Wow, Billy exclaimed. That's pretty clever, Johnny. His grin faded. But how are you going to let the killer know when you don't even know who it is? I think I have a plan, I said confidently. How did the killer find out we were meeting Dr. Fisher at the motel? The way I see it, he, or she, I added, considering Mrs. Fisher, must have seen the fake email I sent from Doris's account. So we just send out another one the same way and see who takes the bait. But how will Dr. Fisher get the email, Johnny? He's dead. I sighed and said, I understand that Dr. Fisher is no longer alive, Billy, but his murderer is still out there, and that's our target. He'll perceive the new email just as he did with the old one, and once he arrives, we can apprehend him. You're brilliant, Billy praised me, and this time I couldn't disagree. I resolved to set my plan in motion immediately. While heading home from the bar, I made a quick stop at the ATM to withdraw some cash. Afterward, I drove to the motel and reserved a room for 2 days. The desk clerk, a disinterested teenager engrossed in watching TV, barely glanced at me. On a whim, I decided to request room 101 again. That'll send a chill down the killer's spine when he sees that, I chuckled to myself. The following day, I rose unusually early to dispatch my message from Doris's device before her awakening. The previous night had been spent carefully crafting the message, and I felt a sense of accomplishment about it. I am aware of your identity and the actions you took against Fisher. the so-called SLT. If you wish to avoid police involvement, meet me in the same room at the same motel where Dr. Fisher met his end. Be there at 2:00 p.m. tomorrow and bring $20,000 in cash or face the consequences. That should suffice, I pondered. After hitting the send button, I ensured to remove the sent message from Doris's computer, just as I had done before. The trap is set, I reassured myself. Now, let's see who falls into it. I headed to work as usual, but maintaining focus was a challenge. My mind was preoccupied with thoughts about who might appear at that motel room the next day, especially if it turned out to be one of the enraged husbands. As I finished work and went to the bar, eager to discuss everything with Billy, he was nowhere to be found. Despite waiting almost an hour, he never showed up, causing me considerable anxiety. Billy was always up for a beer, so I couldn't help but worry about what might have happened to him. On my way home, paranoia took hold. What if the police had apprehended Billy? What if he was revealing our actions at that very moment? What if they were waiting at my house to arrest me? Lost in my fears, I reached home without realizing it. Thankfully, no one was waiting for me, not even Doris, who hadn't arrived yet. A few minutes later, I heard Doris pulling up, and by the time she entered the house, I had put on my loving husband facade. However, she seemed oblivious to my appearance, excitedly sharing the news. "You'll never guess what happened today. Your friend Billy is on the run from the law." My heart almost stopped, but Doris remained oblivious. "He and Phyllis had a major fight, and he gave her a black eye. She called the cops, and he fled to an unknown location." Oh my God, I thought. If they catch him and start questioning him about Dr. Fisher, we're in trouble. Yet Doris continued talking about the situation, failing to notice my panic. In an attempt to conceal my emotions, I feigned interest in her story. "Why were they fighting anyway?" I asked when I got a chance to speak. "The girls at the gym told me Billy suspected Phyllis of cheating on him," she replied, and I inwardly shook my head in dismay. Are there no faithful wives left? I wondered. This thought reignited my anger towards Doris, and I remarked nastily, "Well, if she was cheating, she deserves what she got." Expecting Doris to react strongly to my comment, I was surprised when she didn't respond. This only fueled my frustration. What a hypocrite, I thought. You're the biggest cheater I know, but if I laid a finger on you, you'd be screaming for justice. However, for once, I kept my thoughts to myself. I didn't engage in much conversation with Doris during dinner, and afterward I retreated to the den to contemplate the recent turn of events. Suddenly, a disturbing idea crossed my mind. What if Billy was the murderer? I recalled the folding knife he had during our encounter with the doctor. Could Billy have returned later to finish the job because of Phyllis's betrayal? Although I was reluctant to entertain the thought, it seemed to make a twisted kind of sense. A more unsettling notion followed. What if Billy decided to appear at the motel the next day? While I had a size advantage, I wasn't confident in my ability to prevail in a confrontation, especially if he brought that folding knife. Concerned for my safety, I decided to arm myself and retrieved my stored automatic from the basement. It had been a while since I last used it, but I assumed it was still functional. The following morning, I went to work as usual, but this time, I had my pistol in the car. After lunch, I informed the manager that I needed the rest of the afternoon off. Despite his disapproval, my standing as one of the top salesmen limited his objections. Leaving the dealership, I arrived at the motel well ahead of schedule. Tucking the pistol into my coat pocket, I accessed the room with the card key. As I entered, I debated locking the door behind me, but reconsidered, wanting to give the potential killer easy access. Instead, I propped the door open with the latch and settled into a chair, preparing for the wait. While sitting there, I observed the room and noted the evident installation of new carpet. A shiver ran down my spine as I speculated, I guess the old one had too much blood on it. Even the chair I occupied appeared new, suggesting they had replaced it. Despite these changes, everything else seemed unchanged from my previous visit, providing little comfort. I didn't want to dwell on those thoughts any longer, so I shifted my focus to reviewing my list of potential suspects. The first person on that list had to be Mrs. Fisher. She had a compelling motive, but it was difficult for me to believe she was the culprit. After enduring so much from her husband over an extended period, it seemed unlikely she would suddenly resort to such drastic measures. Nevertheless, I considered the possibility that she had reached her breaking point, reminding myself that she was also the most likely person to have access to Dr. Fisher's email. Next in line were the husbands of the other women who had been involved with Dr. Fisher. I lacked information about their identities or their numbers, but one of them could have a violent disposition. Perhaps one of these individuals had been stalking the doctor, waiting for the opportune moment. Although I couldn't fathom how he might have gained access to the doctor's email, it occurred to me that seizing such an opportunity for revenge would have been tempting. Then my thoughts turned to Billy. I desperately hoped he wasn't involved, but I couldn't ignore the fact that he made for a plausible suspect. Aware of his temper, and, if I were honest, a bit of a mean streak, I acknowledged the possibility that Billy might be smarter than I had initially thought. It seemed improbable, yet I couldn't rule it out. Suddenly, a noise in the hallway caught my attention, prompting me to reach for my gun. The door creaked open, allowing dim light from the hallway to infiltrate the room. To my astonishment, a familiar voice called out, "Johnny? Johnny? Are you in there?" "Doris!" I exclaimed in surprise. "What are you doing here?" I reached out to switch on the lights, only to find my beloved wife entering the room, shaking her head disapprovingly. "I'm here to prevent you from making a really foolish decision, Johnny," she stated. "But how did you know I'd be here?" I asked, puzzled. She folded her arms and commenced lecturing me in that condescending schoolteacher tone I detest. "When I woke up yesterday morning, it was clear that you had tampered with my laptop. I checked my email, initially finding nothing unusual. However, upon reviewing my deleted items, I stumbled upon your foolish message." "Damn!" I cursed at myself. "I should have considered that." "There are plenty of things you should have considered," she retorted angrily. "Maybe if you hadn't dropped out of college." "Don't start lecturing me about that again," I snapped at her. "Besides, I'm the one who has a right to be upset, not you. You were cheating on me with your damn doctor friend. I caught you, and now I'm going to file for divorce." She waved her hand dismissively, as if shooing away a bothersome fly. "That's not important right now. What matters is why you're here. Exactly what did you hope to achieve with that absurd email you sent from my account?" I was quite upset by her nonchalant dismissal of her infidelity, but I felt compelled to justify myself nonetheless. So I started explaining how Billy and I had intentionally brought Dr. Fisher here to expose him, only to later discover that he had been murdered. "We were afraid that the police might suspect us," I explained, "so I took it upon myself to uncover the real killer." I recounted how I posed as a detective to interview Mrs. Fisher and came up with the idea of luring the actual murderer by posing as a blackmailer. As Doris listened, she kept sighing. Finally, she raised her hand to interrupt me. "Johnny, have you ever heard of Alexander Pope?" "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I don't think I've ever met him." She rolled her eyes. "Mr. Pope once said, 'A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring.'" "What's this Persian spring? What are you talking about, Doris?" "Never mind, Johnny, you wouldn't understand," she said, shaking her head in disgust. She took a deep breath, placed her hands on her hips, and I knew I was in for it. "You were never the sharpest tool in the shed, but this plan has to be the most foolish, senseless thing I have ever heard. Firstly, Fisher is dead. Why would anyone be checking the mailbox of a deceased man? And how would they even have access to it?" "Well, they might," I defended. "Anyway, I believe Mrs. Fisher could have access." "That heavy drinker?" Doris chuckled. "She struggles enough to find her way to the scotch bottle, let alone her husband's email account. Well, none of that really matters anyway, I retorted, because I think the real killer got the message. And just who might that be? She asked sarcastically. As much as I hate to admit it, I think the real killer is Billy. I believe he discovered that Dr. Fisher was involved with Phyllis. After he and I left Dr. Fisher alone in the room, I think he returned and slit Fisher's throat. So I'm willing to bet that Billy will walk through that door any minute now, which is why you need to leave right away. Doris delved into her handbag, extracting a pair of surgical gloves and began donning them. I was aware that she always carried them due to her association with the pharmaceutical company, but I couldn't fathom why she needed them in that moment. Then she looked up at me. I'm pretty sure Billy won't be strolling through that door anytime soon because the police nabbed him today. The fool went to the same bar you two frequent, and the police were waiting for him. Oh, wow! I exclaimed in shock. I hadn't heard that. Then I perked up. But maybe that means he'll confess to the police and get me off the hook, I added optimistically. Doris gazed at me calmly. Is that the pistol you keep down in the basement? She inquired. Yes, it is, I replied, taken aback. Can I see it? She asked, extending her hand. I guess, sure, I said, handing it to her. She scrutinized it carefully, ensuring it was loaded and cocked. Then she looked up at me. Despite your theory, I don't think you need to worry about what Billy tells the police. Why not? I asked. Because Billy didn't kill Morris Fisher, she stated flatly. How do you know that? I inquired. Simple, she said, because I'm the one who killed him. You? Why would you kill him? You were in love with him, I nearly shouted. That's right, she said bitterly. I did love him, and he claimed to love me too. He promised to take me away from you and your insipid friends. He was going to marry me and show me all the finer things in life. But then I found out he was also sleeping with Phyllis and that he didn't have the slightest intention of marrying me. She started pacing back and forth, brandishing the pistol to accentuate her words. I was at a loss until I accidentally overheard your conversation with Billy about booking a motel room. Once I stumbled upon your initial email, unraveling your absurd scheme to disgrace Morris became quite straightforward. Initially, my intention was to tip him off, but then I saw the golden opportunity you presented for me to eliminate both of you. I patiently waited outside the motel until you and Billy departed, slipping into the room afterward. Morris was visibly relieved to see me, almost on the verge of tears. However, when I disclosed my knowledge of Phyllis, terror flashed in his eyes. Extracting one of his scalpels, he began pleading and attempted to scream as I carved the word SLT into his unfaithful chest. Duct tape muffled his attempts at screaming loudly. After branding him for the world to see, I tilted his head back and swiftly slit both his jugular vein and carotid artery in a single stroke. Even with the gruesome details, her narrative remained perplexing to me. I can't fathom how you could carry out such an act, I objected. Besides, you were in tears and distraught that night when news of his death aired on TV. Have you not grasped that women can summon tears when necessary? She retorted with a smirk. Her gaze darkened. Ever heard the saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? Oh, right, you probably haven't, given that your reading material consists solely of the sports page. Abruptly halting her pacing, she aimed the gun at me. Despite the gruesome details, those fools on the police force haven't arrested you for Fisher's murder. Your stumbling around has gotten too close to the truth for me to let you live. Unfortunately, I'll have to stage your demise to look like a suicide, right there in the same room where Morris perished. I love the symmetry, she added with a sneer. It's almost poetic. I had never witnessed Doris in such a state, and it was genuinely alarming. Who would have thought she could transform into a ruthless killer? And why on earth did I entrust her with my firearm? What a foolish decision. I had to attempt to dissuade her. "Hold on, Doris," I shouted urgently. "You can't go through with this. Someone who received the email I sent will walk through that door any moment." She scoffed in my face. "This is a perfect illustration of why I must do this. You are hopelessly foolish. Admit it, Johnny. No one saw your absurd email, and no one is rushing to save your foolish self." "That's where you're mistaken," a voice declared from the doorway. "Drop that gun, or you'll be a dead woman." Doris turned her head in amazement to find Detective Monica Ferguson entering with her gun aimed. Right behind her was a uniformed officer with his weapon drawn. Doris hesitated. Then, with a curse, she relinquished her gun, and all resistance seemed to drain from her. She dropped to her knees and began to sob, this time, it appeared, genuinely. Detective Ferguson glanced over her shoulder at the officer and instructed, "Quick, take her gun and cuff her." The officer approached, kicked the pistol away, and efficiently restrained Doris's hands behind her back while the detective kept her under guard. Only after he had finished did Monica relax and take a deep breath. As for me, I was on the verge of collapsing with relief. "Thank goodness you're here," I exclaimed. "Another minute or two, and I'd be dead." Then I gazed at her in sudden bewilderment. "Hold on a minute. Why are you here anyway?" Monica grinned at me. "We've had access to the deceased doctor's email account since he was killed. This morning I happened to check his mailbox and noticed a new email. I wasn't sure what to make of the message, but I wanted to be present to see how things unfolded." I turned to Doris. "Well, I suppose my little plan wasn't as foolish as you thought," I teased her. She shot me an angry glare, but she had no retort. The police officer helped Doris stand and escorted her to the police car. Monica and I trailed behind, and as we walked, something she said struck me. "If you had access to Dr. Fisher's email, why didn't you discover his affair with Doris?" Monica shook her head. "We didn't find out because Dr. Fisher was quite secretive. Apparently, he made a habit of deleting everything from his mailbox as soon as he read it. Perhaps he was concerned about his wife finding out." As if she cared, I thought to myself, recalling our earlier confrontation. However, I kept that to myself, thinking it best not to complicate matters. While the officer was securing Doris in the back seat, I began contemplating the future. "So, what happens to me now?" I asked Monica. She reassured me with a pat on my arm and a lopsided grin. "Well, it's up to the district attorney, but I'd wager he won't press charges against you. Dr. Fisher is deceased, and we now know who really killed him. Given the circumstances, it's doubtful we could secure a conviction on an assault charge against an outraged husband." "Regardless," I said, "if it weren't for you, I'd be dead by now in that motel room. If there's ever a way I can repay you, just let me know." She gave me a thorough once-over and then flashed a broad smile. "Once all this is over, maybe I'll have to visit the dealership where you work and see you. I've been searching for something new, something to add a bit of excitement to my life. Perhaps you can assist me with that." Then she winked, and I didn't need a Nobel Prize to understand the implication.